Every problem that I was seeing in Europe, in Latin America, it felt so much bigger, right? So I decided to start playing the startup game on hard mode. Ensuring that you listen and that you're not talking is important. You know Henry Ford's quote of, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And that's exactly how we approach it. We didn't ask agents what they wanted. We just focused on digging into the problems, and then we created the thesis on how they could do this differently and how we would solve it. And when I say very MVP, I mean they were pretty embarrassing to look at, but that was kind of by design as well. That was the point. We needed to see if agents would actually use them despite the fact that they were pretty bad. If you have to push it down their throat, it's not really something they need. If you don't define your company values, somebody else will.
Mati, it's great to have you here, finally.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the time.
And it's been, a real privilege to sit on the sidelines and see you build Pulppo from a PowerPoint to what it is today. And of course, you'll tell us a bit more about what you're building, what's the vision, and what's your stage today. But again, it's great to have you here and get you to share a little bit of your story with our audience.
No, happy to be here. And yeah, since I met you guys, you helped me. You guys were there from the beginning to helping us from intros to walking our dog, literally. So I think that we will enjoy this conversation. I certainly will.
Absolutely. Pulppo is not your first startup. Could you share a little bit more about your previous experience taking a startup all the way to the exit to Glovo?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Yeah, so my journey actually, I studied in the US and then I did my MBA at ES in Barcelona, and I worked in the corporate world for a number of years in innovation and strategy. And I was when I was 30, I was leading innovation for all of Europe for a big corporate group. And, I was seeing the startups that I was talking to, that they were the drivers of change. And, I wanted to do that. I realized I was in the wrong place. I come from a family of entrepreneurs and I wanted to be part of that change. So I was going back to my home country, to Argentina a lot. And I was realizing, I was looking into problems, and I was seeing that every problem that I was seeing in Europe, in Latin America, it felt so much bigger, right? Everything was more complicated. If you think of infrastructure, regulation. So I decided to start playing the startup game on hard mode. I moved back to Argentina and I started Cadabra. Cadabra was the first. I had a background in logistics, so the Cadabra was the first on-demand delivery in Argentina. You have pedidos ya at the time, but you ordered and the restaurant sent their own person. So I started that. It grew very fast. We bootstrapped it, and within 18 months, we caught the attention of Glovo, and we got acquired. It was very interesting.
Glovo, the Spanish
Correct. Delivery conglomerate, and Glovo wanted to launch in Latin America, and it was great because I went from 0 to 1. We found product market fit. We were lucky that we found it very fast, and at the time, it also taught me a ton about scaling, kind of navigating complex markets, because I went from 0 to 1 with my startup, and then Glovo came in and acquired us, and it gave me the opportunity to really scale that business. Kind of everything that I had in my mind that I would do if I had money, Glovo came and they said, look, this is the playbook. This is how you're going to do it. And I learned a lot about that next stage. So it was a great experience.
That's very cool. So you ended up leading Glovo's operations in Argentina, like in the South Cone, basically.
Right.
Cool. Let's move to Pulppo. Maybe part of the audience here doesn't really know what you do yet, or some of them maybe do. So it would be great to hear from you what you've been building, and especially talking about the kind of the mid-long-term vision. You always tell me that you have this grand vision to basically reshape the role of real estate agents with Pulppo, right? So it's basically taking the current role of real estate agents and transforming that. Why do you think that agents need to change their role in the industry?
So short term, what we started building is that we built the operating system for real estate agents so they can basically sell and we take everything else and we do it and automate it for them. But in terms of the bigger vision, which is what we're trying to get to, a little bit of context. Let's go back 30 years when real estate agents had a huge advantage, which was information asymmetry. If you wanted to move to a neighborhood, they were the gatekeepers of property listings. They're the ones you would go to a local real estate agent and they knew what was being sold, right? So you had to go through them. But over the past few years, Stilo, Viva Real, Inmuebles 24, call it what you made, they made that information asymmetry go away. Today, most people find their own homes online and they just send the listing to their agent. So in a lot of cases, people think that their agent doesn't add value because you even hear the sentence of, I even found the home and sent it to the agent. I don't understand how they help me. Here's the thing. Buying a home is one of the biggest financial decisions that you'll make in your life. So people still want an expert in their corner. It's because of loss aversion. We're afraid that we're going to make the wrong decision. So we look to have an expert advisor. So that's where we come in, and that's where the vision comes in. Information asymmetry is off the table, but we still use an agent because we want to have the expert by our side. And so we're now giving them the tools to do their job better, but we're going to work into redefining their roles. That means that after we build the operating system that handles all of the operational heavy lifting for them, we're going to be integrating financial service, vetted moving companies, and everything else that a home buyer might need. So when you move to your next home, before the agent used to help you find the home and then you had to do everything else. But with Pulppo, we're going to convert them into full-on advisors that guide you through that entire home buying journey and all the needs that might come up.
That's an amazing vision. And yeah, as you said, it's like we get advice on way smaller decisions in life, right? This is getting the best possible advisor for one of the largest, at least financial decisions of your life. I know you've just been at that, so that's at another level, right? In terms of
They're both right up there.
personal milestones. But yeah, buying a home is right behind that. I'm curious now to hear how this vision started three years and a half ago, right? Was there a specific pain point in the real estate market that inspired you, given you were previously a real estate developer, and of course Agustin, your co-founder, he's a veteran in the real estate, in the prop tech industry, right? Well, what was the aha moment that led to the founding of Pulppo? What was the unfair insight that you had to begin your company?
So we're both industry veterans, but we come from different angles to it. So as you mentioned, Agus came from building a prop tech company. He bootstrapped Toco, that for anybody within the industry is the largest real estate CRM in Latin America. It was acquired by Navent, that now is part of Quinto Andar. And not only he built that, but he also comes from a family of real estate brokers. And after that, Navent asked him for a number of years to be the general manager for Inmuebles 24, which is in Latin America. So he's probably the most knowledgeable person I've met in PropTech by a mile and then some. And then from my side, I come from a family of entrepreneurs, architects, and real estate developers. On the side, I had always been involved in this sector, and I really enjoy it. And we had Franco Bresciano, a very strong entrepreneur as well, introduce us. And when we first met, I already had this vision because I had worked with agents and I realized that they were important and I always had the same one. So I don't look, it's not about eliminating them. It's about creating the operating system so they do what they're best and we do everything else for them. And I remember he literally pulled up an email. He's like, look, I have to show you this, of an email that he has sent to somebody like 2 days before with the exact same vision. And, we just clicked. We said, if we can automate and get rid of all the operational work for them, we can free up agents to focus on what they do best, which is building relationships and selling homes.
Looking back at that experience, what was one key mistake and one key learning that you brought maybe from Canastra and Glovo into Pulppo?
I think that what made Glovo stand out as they grew, and still to this day I believe it, is that from day one they grounded very strong company values. And I know that sometimes that sounds like, like we heard it a little bit too much, but I can't emphasize enough. So I learned that the hard way, and I saw it in Glovo. And if you don't define your company values, somebody else will. So from day one, what we did at Pulpo, I remember the first conversation before Pulpo was even called Pulpo. Me and Agus, we sat down. Agustin, my co-founder at Pulpo, we had a really long conversation about personal values. So first of all, I think that a company value needs to be a reflection of the founder's personal values. It would be very hard for you as a founder to claim that people need to have work-life balance if by nature you work around the clock and you send emails at 2 in the morning. I'm not saying what's right and what's wrong. I'm just saying you want to find your personal values that you want to see in your company. You want to reflect those. If you are co-founders, you have to make sure that everybody has the same values, because again, if one co-founder believes that work-life balance is very important and the other one believes that an early stage startup needs to be working around the clock, you're going to run into major problems over time. So to me, that was the biggest learning that we got. I think that since we did a Pulpo, the entire company shares those values because it's the first thing that we look at as we bring in new team members.
That's a cool insight, and data shows, right, that problems between co-founders is one of the main, if not the main reason, well, startups fail. And what you're saying in a way is have those hard conversations early, upfront, very transparently with your partners for potentially 10, 20 years, right? I like
Absolutely. Dale.
that's very cool, Mati. And now I want to double click on that moment, right? Because as you know, Latitud, like we focus on this stage of founders, right? Like founders in ideation stage when they're finding their thesis, refining it, finding a co-founder. As you probably saw, we relaunched our Latitude Fellowship. We're taking 10 entrepreneurs in ideation stage to San Francisco in a couple of months. So I want to double click in this moment. So, okay, you meet Agustin. You both had this kind of raw thesis, right? After that point, how did you go about exploring and validating that thesis initially?
Yeah, we definitely had an unfair advantage that we have Agus in our corner, and he's been in the trenches for a very long time, and he knows exactly what an agent needed. When we had the very first product meeting, I remember that the entire team walked up to the board and everybody wrote down all the modules that they thought we needed. And after that, there had to be like 100 items on the list. And I remember he gets up, he goes to the list, and he goes through it, and he circles about 10 items and says, guys, this is all you need to build. Everything else I can guarantee you they won't use it. And I've been there and I built it and I know what they need. So we had this unfair advantage of somebody who has been in the sector, and we were able to validate because of experience.
It was like Javier Milei, the Argentinian president, doing afuera, afuera, kicking out people.
And it was really funny to see, and I remember somebody saying like, but people need to log in and end users and save properties, and he goes, I can tell you right now, nobody ever does that. So you have a huge advantage, and we can talk a little bit about obviously having industry expertise. It makes such a big difference. But the second thing that we did to validate is that we sat down with agents. And so while we were building the product, the first 2, 3 months, we would run breakfast for agents at Agus's house in Polanco. Like his daughters were waking up to go to school and they were listening in the background. We would bring 5, 10 agents to his home, invite them to breakfast. And we didn't talk about our solutions. We wouldn't tell them anything. We just focused on understanding their struggles. They knew that I was building something, so that helped a lot. And I think that part of ensuring that you listen and that you're not talking is important. Henry Ford's quote of, "If I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses," and that's exactly how we approach it. We didn't ask agents what they wanted. We just focused on digging into the problems, and then we created the thesis on how they could do this differently and how we would solve it.
Very cool. And then you want to double click a little bit on that MVP and how it looked like? Well, maybe or
Yeah. So in our case, remember that we're building an entire operating system, and that is hard because you have to build, by definition, a lot of modules. I'm
there's no
not,
way to sell an operating system. Yeah, you start by selling certain Trojan horses, certain modules.
Ex- Exactly. So what we did is that out of a number of modules, potential ones, of this huge list of features, we picked four that we thought were the ones that they were going to use the most. We built a CRM, the property valuation tool because there was none available in Mexico, a sharing tool because it wasn't available, and the marketing center for automating campaigns. So with those, and when I say very MVP, I mean they were pretty embarrassing to look at, but that was kind of by design as well. That was the point. We needed to see if agents would actually use them, despite the fact that they were pretty bad. And so that's how we really got on track with what are the things that they need and what are the things that you're kind of pushing down their throat. If you have to push it down their throat, it's not really something they need.
Love it, man. That's those are good insights. Let's move one step ahead. So you had the MVP. You started going out to the market with a quite a special way of doing it, I would say, compared to other startups, given your target segment. Why don't you share a little bit of that and maybe what the office that you opened? Share a little bit of the go-to-market strategy initially in Mexico.
Yeah, so that's a great question because it's something that we had to figure out the hard way. So real estate is a people-driven industry. It's not like buying a car where all the cars are the same, where the brand and the process matter most. In real estate, the agent is everything because there are many SKUs in real estate as there are properties available in the world. There are no two properties that are identical. So our strategy had to reflect that. We didn't just build a product and throw it out there. We had to get uncomfortably close with our customers that were the agents. And to your point, what we did was from day one, we did something very unconventional that we opened a very nice office that you've been there. And we invited our agents as part of, let's say, the package that they could come and work out of there. And we invited them to come and work out of there. And we said, if you're here, we're going to solve everything for you, no matter what it is. If you need a lawyer, like we'll have a lawyer. And the idea wasn't that wasn't what we were going to scale, but it was about getting up and close with our customers. It was about making sure that our entire team got up and close with our customer and they would be up in their face. I think that it happens a lot that you tend to have founders or somebody on the team, like a product person who talks to customers, and then you have most of the team that doesn't talk to customers. And it's a frustrating, any founder has gone through this will know it's very frustrating when you have a team saying, our product is great, it works great, it has absolutely no bugs. And the founder is going, every customer I talk to says that it's buggy as it could come. So we did this thing, and I think that it's very important early on that you get up and close with your customers uncomfortably up and close.
Yeah, you definitely did things differently there, and I think that was you came into the Mexican market with a bang. Now you're operating in both Mexico and Colombia. You're launching in Argentina soon in your home country. How does the go-to-market strategy kind of change as you go into as you open new markets? The market structures are similar, or each of them is quite unique.
So, yes, it's different. So, if you have an industry that isn't, let's say, people driven, so that it's more process driven, think of Kavak for cars, think of Rappi for food, think of those playbooks are, while there is technology, you have an operational playbook that needs to identically be replicated in each country. And the perfection of it comes of actually doing it exactly the same way because you're very great at the process. Um, when you have a people-driven industry like we do, it's different. Each market has its own quirks. In Colombia, we had to partner with Bancolombia, which is the country's largest bank, and we enter the market there because it's a market that needs credibility and access in order to be able to enter the real estate market. In Mexico, we took a very different approach, and in Argentina, it will be different again. That being said, it doesn't mean that you have as many go-to-market strategies as markets are in the world. But I'm a big believer that in a people-driven, and again, think of if you're building for accountants, that it's somebody that you trust, or think if you're building for lawyers, which is somebody that you trust. You can't do a one-size-fits-all, but you build an operating system that solves 80% of the problems, and then your distribution system in the country needs to change based on the particularities of the country.
Before we get it, we starting getting to the final part of the interview and asking you about the future of Pulpo. I just wanna ask you about. I mean, you're an Argentinian. Agustin was living in Mexico beforehand. You basically moved to Mexico to start Pulpo, right? This is something that Latitud we've seen a lot in the last, I would say, 5 years. Entrepreneurs from the small countries, Uruguay, Chile, definitely moving to larger markets, but even entrepreneurs from the medium markets, let's call Argentina and Colombia, especially from Argentina, moving their whole life to a new city, to a new country, looking for larger opportunities, larger markets. What can you share about that, especially thinking of early stage entrepreneurs thinking of doing the same, thinking about switching basically their whole life pursuing a larger opportunity?
Um, Pack up a bag and go. I I I can't emphasize on that enough. I don't, and I was somewhat reluctant. I was in Argentina. I was very comfortable, and Agus was in Mexico. And because I had lived in, I lived in Czech Republic, in Spain, I lived in all these places. I thought that I had it covered, that I knew, and I would bring in, some of the things that I would say. Agus would stop me and go, "That's not how it works here. You have to come and you need to see it, and it doesn't matter how many times I explain it to you, until you live it, you're not going to see it." So I did what I had done so many times before, and I thought I wasn't going to be doing again. I packed up a bag and I moved to Mexico. I I can't emphasize that enough. I don't think that there is a way that you can build a product for a user and not understand that user. And you can't understand a user from a customer interview for a $50 Amazon gift card. It has to be up and close, and it needs to be multiple occasions, and you need to go through the experiences, and you need to understand, like in real estate, you need to understand the horrible traffic in the city. You need to understand the dynamics. You need to understand what is happening with the banks. The banks are horrible. I mean, like much worse than in other countries. And that's part of the process. But if somebody tells you, if you're not there and you don't live those problems, it's very hard for you to empathize and to really create solutions for them.
Cool. Let's start looking forward. So tell us a little bit about plans for the next financings. Of course, I know the answer, but why don't you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah. So our fundraising history, you know that it's different than most startups by design. Well, we raised quite a bit of money. We raised $6 million between pre-seed and seed rounds. We had a strategy, or I created a strategy that our cap table was long and diverse by design. I believe that we have some of the most amazing entrepreneurs have come across, as well as some of the best early stage funds from Argentina, Brazil, Europe, Y Combinator, 1984 from the US. And a while back, I wrote a post on it that it was about why everybody should apply to YC, but why everybody should have that long cap table at the beginning in pre-seed and seed. And the thing is that when you're a new founder, the startup life, it's kind of like a path full of mines. If you think about it, the way I explain it, if you're a new founder, you have no idea where those mines are. If you're a repeat founder, like Aus or I were, You might know where a couple of the mines are, but only a few. If you think of YC, they have seen thousands of founders walk that minefield and they know exactly where the mines are. If you grab, if on your cap table, you have Latitud and you have 1984 and you have YC and you have Newtopia and you have Boost Capital, then they've seen all different kinds of minds. That doesn't mean that you're going to listen to everybody, but early stage, you're kind of getting, all their experiences on those minds that you might run into. So we had that strategy. I personally, it has worked out in our favor very, very much. I have a very long list of people working, of very smart people working for us, that gave us money. Now, in terms of future funding, it changes a little bit. We are going to be launching our Series A in the near future, and that is to get us closer to our vision of what we talked at the beginning of the podcast of reshaping the role of the real estate agent. So until now, the first step was building the operating system to free them to do what they do best, which is selling. Um, and now that we do everything else for them, that they have doubled their revenue in their first 12 months, and that we have amazing metrics, we have NPS of 60, we have more than 90% retention in 12 months. Now we start working on the new frontier, which is piloting the integration of embedded financial services. So our agents are the crossroads of the decision making of you buying a home or renting a home. They can now start offering you all those embedded services, and they can start becoming that real estate of the future that we have so much been talking about.
Very cool. So that with that in mind, what are, like, if you look forward for the next 24 months, what are the next couple of milestones for you guys?
Yeah, it's going to be regardless of what we decide to do with the round. Or for the next 24 months, we have a very clear roadmap to replicate the model that we have talked about in new markets. We're going to start piloting the integration of those embedded financial services, and we're going to be growing the team while maintaining the culture that got us here. And so the first two, I think, are very self-explanatory. The third one, I think, is the trickiest. Scaling a team is hard, especially when you're trying to keep the same level of excellence. And I'm sure you heard A players bring A players, B players bring C players. Um, the problem is that ensuring that all A players, that you're maintaining that team is very hard when you start getting to this stage. And I saw it with Glovo, and I saw it with other startups. So now we're getting into this moment. I heard Pedro Arndt in a conversation saying something like this, that after a certain point, you can have all A players, but you have to make sure that the key roles that you have within your organization are filled by A players. I think that if you miss that, you are very, very likely not to hit all your other growth goals. So, for me, that's going to be critical over the next 24 months.
Very cool, love it. Pedro, for anyone that doesn't know him, he's now the CEO of the local, and before that, he was a founding team member at Mercado Libre, where he had C-level roles for 2 decades or more.
Yeah,
Um,
and he talked a lot about that. I think that was very interesting when he said, "Look, Mercado Libre always aims at having A players, but if you have all A players in a company of whatever 20,000 people, everybody's going to kill each other. You can't have everybody that wants to be CEO, but you have to make sure that the people in the critical roles of leading and of growth are A players, or you are likely to stop your growth."
Absolutely. Amazing. So let's get into the final question here. I want you to give some advice to emerging founders. At Latitud, we invest in the 0 to 1, right? We write that first check, pre-seed check. Our fellowship comes even before that. We're calling it the -1 to 0, if you want, helping founders find idea and their co-founders. But so let's talk about the 0 to 1. I want to know what advice you'd give to founders also going through that 0 to 1 stage, especially looking at how did you realize at Pulppo that you had gone from 0 to 1? What was the turning point?
Okay. All right, so let me talk about turning point first, then about maybe some advice. Uh, So, in terms of the turning point, for us, it was metrics. From day one, we tracked NPS, retention, metrics that are obviously you're looking at revenue, but you have to look at your retention and satisfaction metrics. When those numbers go through the roof, we know, you have product market fit. There's also, so we looked at those that they were doing extremely well. And we looked at a third one that it's not very common. I heard Anu that she's the general partner at Abra. She was the director at YC Continuity Fund. That she said, ask your customers how disappointed they would be if your product disappeared tomorrow. When more than 40% of your customers say very disappointed, that's when you know that you hit product market fit. I find this one to be a really good question. And to be honest, it coincidentally happened that when we made it past 40%, our growth was going just as fast. So there's definitely something there that I would encourage everybody to keep track of. The second part, so on the advice, so two things. The one is, I think that this one's a little cliche, but find a problem that you're passionate about. You're going to spend a lot of time on it. You're going to have to do a lot of boring stuff for it. So you better love it. And I I knew, so I come from a family of field hockey players that they were, my entire family. So I've known Delfina Merino since she was born. She's friends of the family. She was the best field hockey player in the world, I think a year or a couple of years. She was the captain of Las Leonas. And in a conversation with Delphi, I remember asking her about they were getting ready for the Olympics and how much she loved what she was doing and she was living the dream, right? That you think, and she kind of said, "Look, I prepare for a game that it's going to be over in 2 hours, and I might be going home very very fast, and I practice for it 8 hours a day." Every day I wake up in the morning, I practice for 4 hours, I come back, I take a nap and have lunch, and then I go and I practice another 4 hours. I think that that reflects the life of the entrepreneur. You have this long-term vision that might or might not come. So you better really love what you're working on, because there's just a lot of practice and a lot of work in between, and it might never lead up to much. The second one that we have talked about is start with values. I know it sounds fluffy when you're starting out and you don't know if your idea is even going to stick, but trust me, ask any experienced entrepreneur. It's what's gonna help you grow, and it's what's gonna keep your company strong. And I said too, but I guess the last one is that we talked about as well. Don't be afraid to be uncomfortably close with customers. Find a way to do it. If you are walking dogs, if you're doing a startup that's walking dogs, go walk dogs. If you are doing a startup that it's for real estate agents, open an office and they can work out of.
Amazing, Mati. These are great actionable pieces of advice for founders. This is what we're looking for. So thanks again for being here. Thanks for sharing a little bit of your story and Pulpo story. And best of luck for this 2025 up and coming year, which is definitely a very important one for you and the company.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Tommy, thanks always for the support, for everything that Latitude is doing and has done. And yeah, looking forward.
Day zero. Vamos, Latam.